The Hunt for Atlantis. We start with the tale of Edgar Cayce, a strange young man from humble beginnings, but with a profound gift. One day, while playing ball at school, he was struck in the head, and reports said that he was acting kind of funny, according to his parents. While asleep, he began to mutter, "Ooh." But this wasn't just sleep talking, it was coherent, educated, in fact. He told his parents in a trance what his condition was and how they could cure it. They followed his directions, and he was cured! This would be the first of 14,000 instances of his psychic gift. He was known as the Sleeping Prophet. He predicted World War II and the stock market crash of 1929. Then he also said that Atlantis was in the Bahamas, specifically Benimi. Benimi? I don't know, and that it was 10,000 years old. He also claimed that Atlantis had magical crystals that powered modern like technology and what more. He said that it would arise from the sea in 1968. How fancy. In 1968, which was after Case's death, a group of divers surveyed Benimi. They found an underwater formation that looked like a cobblestone road or wall. They had found Atlantis. People flocked to Benimi to visit Atlantis. Along with them, the geologist Eugene Shin. People reported that the Benimi Road, as it was called, had an aura. Obviously, this was energy coming from the magical crystals, and the only way to feel it would be to strip down naked and swim into the waters. Okay, so anyways, surrounded by naked tourists, Mr. Shin dove down and collected samples of the Benimi Road and found that it was just a bunch of beach rock. Completely normal for the region, a structure made from rising sea levels and erosion. Not only was it completely normal, but even if it was man made, the structure was only 4,000 years old max. Also, there have been no artifacts discovered in the region. Researching Atlantis genuinely makes me so happy because every other day I read some story like this that feels like absolute satire, something from a South Park video. And this video specifically will go over the history of these wild Atlantis theories starting from the very beginning. In 360 BC, Plato published the Timaeus and Critias dialogues, which many now call the Atlantis Report. Plato wrote about how 250 years prior, the Greek lawmaker Solon visited Egypt, attained the Atlantis story from them, passed it down to relatives and friends until Critias the Younger shared it before Socrates around probably 420 BC, the record of which would only be published formally by Plato in 360 BC. The immediate reception of the Atlantis report was mixed. Plato was called a fraud. Some pupils of Plato and his school came to his defense over this. Critics claim that Plato made it all up as an allegory to support the Republic, a work that Plato had published earlier. The Atlantis report poses a serious threat to the credibility of Plato. Yet, his pupils, such as Crantor of Soli, say that it was a historical fact, which also puts their own credibility on the line. In reality, the nature of the Atlantis report is immensely complicated, and it would take way too much time to explain. But I will explain in a future video, and I have briefly explained in videos before. Atlantis would continue to be a sore spot for Greek Stoics, especially Platonists. For nearly 1,000 years, the Academy of Plato in Athens would stick to their guns of the reality of Atlantis. It seems that while the initial criticism of Atlantis was harsh, as the centuries passed by, Atlantis became somewhat irrelevant to anyone else other than die-hard Platonists. The Romans took some interest into the myth, but it did not become viral, since they were more concerned with their own history and mythology than an unproven Greek legend. One philosopher, Poseidonus of Rhodes, allegedly wrote a commentary on the Atlantis report. Unfortunately, this commentary is lost, but his student Cicero wrote that Poseidonus taught Atlantis to have been historical fact. The famous Roman Stoic Cicero himself, at best, was apathetic, however. Atlantis is again sparsely mentioned by some early Platonic Christians. The relationship between secular Greek philosophy and Christian theology is messy and fascinating, and definitely a topic for my other channel, Cryptic Anthropologist, which I will be posting on soon. In relation to Atlantis specifically, many early Greco Roman Christians ascribed to the Atlantis report as being evidence of the truth of the Bible. For them, the destruction of Atlantis was proof of Noah's great flood. Tertullian and Arnobius both pointed to how similarly the Atlanteans were destroyed because of their pride, saying that Atlantis was destroyed for its paganism. In the 6th century, the Catholic monk Cosmas Indosophilistes included Atlantis in a flat earth model of the world, which is the first case of Atlantis being lumped into other equally controversial topics of debate, to put it kindly. The central idea of Atlantis has always been a mythical island to the west of the known world. So it's no surprise that the Atlantis myth only really began to come culturally prominent with the discovery of the Americas. The hypothesis was obvious. America was the lost Atlantean continent. The Maya were the likely candidates. A powerful empire which mysteriously disappeared and only the towering ruins remain seems perfect. Suddenly, scholars became very interested in Atlantis, and even after most scholars rejected America as Atlantis itself, there was an excitement for the story that has prevailed ever since. Very quickly, there were concerns, however, since the Americas did not sink into the ocean. Obviously. Abraham Ortelius suggested that the Americas was Atlantis, but that instead of sinking like in the myth, that the continents were originally closer or connected to each other, but then broke off and then drifted away. This is coincidentally one of the earliest propositions for the concept of continental drift. Crazy. Everything is Atlantis. Anyways, what also came was the concept of Utopia. Far to the west, across the sea, there is a land called Vinland. It's warm and fertile, a faraway land where neither slave traders nor the flames of war reach. That quote is elite ball knowledge. Peak. Vinland is what the Vikings called America, since it was suitable land for wineries, wineland. Although the Vikings became disenfranchised with Vinland, this utopian type association with America persisted, which is why so many pilgrims fled to America from persecution. The term utopia was actually coined by Sir Thomas More in a book inspired by Atlantis and America. It's fascinating just how much influence Atlantis has had in the modern day. But where Atlantis theories start to become radically controversial and crazy is with the Victorian era and Industrial Revolution. The natives' connections to Atlantis became contested. Many Europeans attributed Atlantis to Noah's flood, and the Mayans Atlantis. They said that Noah's flood destroyed the pagan Mayans. They argued that the temples of places like Chichen Itza were built by Atlanteans, and that the natives in the Americas were not related, and they were not even capable of such high society sophistication. The existence of such temples proves that a more sophisticated race existed before the natives, which they thought to be Atlanteans, of course. The French scholar Brasseur de Bourbourg, an important translator of Mayan texts, suggested in a book that modern Mayans were actually descendants of Atlantis, an idea for which he lost credibility, as it would imply that the modern natives were descendants of Atlanteans. And there was no way that the savages of the jungle could be responsible for such architectural marvels. This time period today is seen as very racist. Who would have thunk? And I don't disagree. But I'm hoping it came more from ignorance than malice, at least. It's a foolish hope, I know. Very soon after, another archaeologist, Augustus Le Pongleon, conducted some Maya related digs and wrote his own book, but gave his own narrative to Atlantis. He invented the idea of the island Mu. Mu? I don't know. It's fake, anyways. Which he said was Atlantis as well, and was related to Greek and Egyptian deities. And I've never read the book, but apparently it's pretty crazy, and is obviously a fantasy novel masquerading as archaeology. Kind of like Scientology. Later, James Churchward identified it as the land of Lemuria, a different island continent that actually went to war against Atlantis. This is the stage of Atlantis study where scholars just straight up start making things up. Some ideas of which still prevail, such as Atlantis being a futuristic society or magically powered by crystals. At the time, archaeology had this idea called polygenism, which is the idea that each race evolved separately from a different hominid ancestor. This is to say that whites and Asians come from a two different species, like Neanderthals versus Homo sapiens. And this explains the differences between races, such as intelligence and strength. Oh, but it gets worse. You thought it couldn't get more racist? Oh, it gets more racist. This was used by some to explain that Africans weren't even human. You see, because they evolved from a different monkey. They're not even the same species as us. Or they're a bit later in the track of evolution. And that's why they're so dumb. Please, not my words. This is what scholars back in the day actually thought. Now, if you thought the racism couldn't get any worse, buckle in. Helena Blavatsky, a Russian American author, took it to the next level. She wrote a book proposing the idea of root races. This is the idea that humans are all evolving on the same trajectory, but instead of a physical evolution, it's spiritual. We are currently in the fifth stage of human evolution. The previous stage was the Atlantean stage. Our current stage is called the Aryan stage. I think you can see where this is going. And oh, I will be making a video dedicated to root race theory. It's actually like a real cult which believes that in 700 years the reincarnation of Julius Caesar will rule the world and lead the sixth stage of human evolution. Yeah. Oh, and the capital of Julius Caesar will be in Baja, California. Now, did I mention Aryans? Yes, this is where the Nazis become involved. They took root race and said that the Aryan race were descendants of Atlantis, and that they would instigate the next evolution. Six. They relocated Atlantis to the north and said it to be the origin of the Nordic and German master race. The Nazi SS created a group called the Honorby, literally meaning ancestral heritage, led by Heinrich Himmler. The goal was simple: use archaeology to prove that the Germans were Atlanteans, therefore proving that the Aryans have always been the master race. The reason why this is so important is because it fixed a problem in the Nazi perspective of the master race. That is, if the Aryans are the master race, then why was it that the ancient Romans were the ones dominating Europe? By adopting Atlantis as the ancient Germanic Empire, it turned the ancient Germanic people as a forgotten superpower, of which the Nazis were bringing back. Naturally, the dominant Nazi theory placed Atlantis in the North Sea or Arctic Circle, just north of Germany, although the Nazis never came to a conclusion, as the SS archaeologist Edmund Kiss believed Atlantis to be in Bolivia, specifically Tiwanaku. West Africa also came up sometimes, and somehow the Tibetan mountains are also important to this theory. The Nazi theory of Atlantis and how it fit into their cosmology is nothing short of fascinating. Expect a full video on that specifically sometime. Possibly one of the worst things to have happened to the study of Atlantis was the adoption of it by the Nazis. It seems that after World War II, scholars saw the special interests of Atlantis within the Nazis, and so any research by the Germans got lumped into Nazi propaganda, even if it was not meant to be that. But more than that, it seems that scholars in general stopped caring about Atlantis. Around this time, around after World War II, the thought on Atlantis changes. It actually reverts back to the common theory of classical contemporaries of Plato, invention theory. Invention theory is that it's all fake! Nothing more than an allegory meant to promote Plato's Republic. This theory took academia by storm, since it gave an answer to the origin of Atlantis, but without the risk of having to actually do anything to prove it. It's easy to say that it was all made up, and as a scholar, you look smarter. Turned into fantasy, Atlantis stuck around to inspire storytellers. Disney Atlantis movie is quite popular. And whenever I ask anyone what they know of Atlantis, I often get the answer, I like the Disney movie. Pretty cool. And I concur. J.R.R. Tolkien quite liked Atlantis and used the concept for his island city of Numenor. And my personal favorite, the Lego Atlantis theme. That animated short series was peak when I was a kid. Just gotta say. There are still people who believe, although few and far between. To believe in Atlantis is academic suicide. As such, Atlantomaniacs began to try and prove their theories with archaeology instead of psychic abilities. This is where some of the more popular theories have risen from, to include the Azores Islands, the Rishat structure, and ancient Minoa. But each of these theories come with their own pros and cons. They claim to follow the Atlantis report exactly, but none actually do. These are all theories that we will go into depth during other videos. Now we get into current day, and Atlantis has found a new home. Conspiracy theories! Flat Earth! Aliens! Woo! Graham Hancock might be the worst culprit of this. Funnily enough, during the first archaeology class I took in college, one of the TAs pulled up Graham Hancock and said, "This guy has done more harm to archaeology than any other modern archaeologist ever." And he's not even an archaeologist! He's a journalist. Which apparently is actually true. He's a journalist. These theories tend to echo the theories of the late 1800s, with crazy ideas like humans with modern technology in ancient times, pre Noah's Flood civilizations, ancient aliens, Agartha, and so much more. So, as you can see, Atlantis has a very long, complicated history, and unfortunately has become more known as a marketing gimmick to sell Lego sets or a fancy hotel. Even those who want to learn more get pulled into these loony conspiracies, far, far distant from archaeological fact. And this is what I aim to do with my YouTube channel is to actually educate you with facts on Atlantis. We will go through systematically through these various theories, debunk them, but also try to find some truth in them because I love Atlantis. I actually think that's probably out there. But as I've always said, the person who discovers Atlantis is someone who's dumb enough to believe it's true, but smart enough to actually look in the right place. Okay, so I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a couple months since I uploaded last. As you might see, I moved and there's been a lot of changes in my life. I am becoming more involved in the academic field of anthropology, doing research projects. In a couple months here, I'm going to be leaving for Thailand to do an ethnography. Ethnography is when you basically collect data on a specific group of people. So it's going to be pretty fun. I don't know how video content creation will be like out there, but I am a real anthropologist, and archaeology does fall in the lines of anthropology, because it's a study of culture, right? And archaeology is specifically ancient culture. So there's hopefully a lot of stuff to come. I have a video in the works right now. The first video for my anthropology a YouTube channel, which is going to be about Vikings and Romans, and why I think that how do I say this? I feel like Vikings are becoming more culturally relevant in the modern day than like Romans or knights and whatnot. Like you see more people basically cosplaying as Vikings, I feel like, and I kind of want to talk about why there's been this cultural shift. So if you're excited for that video, I guess subscribe to that channel, be ready. But also, I mentioned a lot of different like theories in this video today and different topics, and so leave a comment and tell me what you would actually like to see me make a video on of the different things I went over in this video, because I went over a lot of stuff but not super deeply, so I can definitely go into 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 deep into depth on something specifically. But yeah, thank you so much for watching the video. Hope to see you in the next one. Adios.